Every night at 3:03 a.m., someone or something passes in front of my house whistling. You can only hear it if you're in the living room or the kitchen when it passes by, and it always starts exactly at 3:03 a.m. The sound begins faintly, somewhere, near the start of the street, close to the Carson place. We live around the middle of the street, so the whistling moves past us before fading away in the direction of the cul-de-sac. When I was younger, my sister and I used to sneak into the kitchen some nights to listen. Mom and Dad didn't like it, and if they caught us, we'd be in trouble. But they were never too harsh on us as long as we followed the one big rule. Don't try to look at whatever is whistling. My neighborhood is a strange place. I've lived here since I was 6 and I love it. The houses are small but well kept. The yards are big, and there are plenty of places to explore. There are a lot of kids my age around here. I turned 13 in October. We all grew up together, playing foursquare in the cul-de-sac or running from porch to porch in the summer. It was a great place to grow up. I'm old enough to see that now. And there are only 2 strange things here: the night whistling and the good luck. The whistling never really bothered me. Like I said, I couldn't even hear it from my bedroom. But Mom and Dad don't like talking about it, so I stopped asking questions. My dad is a strong man, tall and calm. He has an accent because he moved to the US when he was a kid. His family, my grandparents, are from the islands. That's what they call it. My dad is always steady, except when the whistler comes up. That's when he talks a little faster. His eyes dart around, and he tells us not to think about it too much. And above all, to always remember the big rule. Never look outside when the whistler passes. Not that we could, even if we wanted to. Every window in the house has thick, heavy canvas shutters that roll down from the top and latch at the bottom. Each latch even has a small lock, about the size of a diary lock. Every night, my dad locks those shutters before we go to bed and keeps the key in his room. My mom, I don't really know what she thinks about the whistling. I've seen her, sitting in the living room at 3:03 a.m. when the sound starts. I could see her if I cracked my door open just an inch to peek. She's not out there often, at least not that I've noticed, but once or twice a month, I think she sits on our big red couch just listening. The whistler has the same tune every night. It's cheerful. Da, 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 dum. Da, 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 dum. Remember how I said there are 2 strange things about where I live? Well, aside from our night whistler, everyone in our neighborhood is really lucky. It's hard to explain, and Dad doesn't like us talking about it either, but good things just seem to happen here all the time. Usually it's small things. Winning a radio contest, getting an unexpected promotion at work, or finding arrowheads buried in the yard, the real authentic kind. The weather is always pleasant, there's no crime, and everyone's gardens bloom extra bright in the fall. A million little blessings I've heard my mom say about living here. But the real reason we stayed, the reason we moved here in the first place, was my sister Nola. She was born very sick, something with her lungs. We couldn't even bring her home when she was born, only visit her in the hospital. She was so small, I remember, smaller than the other babies. A machine had to breathe for her. We moved into this house to be closer to the hospital, and as soon as we did, Nola started getting better. The doctors couldn't explain it. They said it must have been the treatments, but you could tell they were confused. But my parents knew. Even I knew. Nola's recovery was just another one of the million little blessings that came from living here. And that's why we stayed. Even after we found out that, for every little miracle that happens here every day, once in a while, something bad happens, but those bad things only happen if you try to see the whistler. You see, our neighborhood has a welcome committee. Whenever someone new moves in, they show up with a macaroni casserole, a gift basket, and a manila folder. They're very friendly. 4 people showed up when we moved in 7 years ago. They made small talk, gave me a chocolate bar, and took turns holding Nola. Since it was her first week out of the hospital, they were extra careful. Then the committee asked to speak to my parents in private. I was sent to my room, but I still managed to hear nearly every word. The welcome committee told my parents about how special the neighborhood was, really exceptional, almost impossible to explain. And then they told them about the whistling. They said it happened every night at 3:03 a.m. and ended exactly at 3:05 a.m. The group, our new neighbors, warned my parents that the whistling was quiet, that it would never harm or hurt us, as long as we never tried to see what was making the sound. This part they emphasized a lot, and I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear them. People who tried to see the whistler had their luck change, sometimes tragically. A dark cloud would hang over anyone who looked. Everything that could go wrong would. The manila envelope the committee brought contained newspaper clippings, stories about car crashes, ruined lives, public deaths, and freak accidents. Not everyone dies, I heard the head of the committee tell my dad, but the life goes out of them. Even if they live, there's no light in them ever again. No presence. My mom. I could tell she wasn't taking it seriously. She kept asking if this was some practical joke they played on new neighbors. At one point, she got angry, accused the committee of trying to scare us away from our new home, even asked if they were racist because my dad was from the islands. My dad calmed her down, told her he could tell our new neighbors were sincere and that they were just trying to help us. He explained that he had grown up hearing stories like this from his mother and that he knew there were strange things that walked among us. Some of those things were good, some were bad, but most were just different. After the committee left, my dad went to the hardware store, bought canvas blinds, latches, and locks, and installed them on every window in the house after dinner. That first night in our new house, I crept out of my room at 3 a.m., only to find my dad awake, sitting on the living room couch, holding my baby sister. He held up a finger in a shoe motion, but patted the couch beside him. I sat down, and we waited. At exactly 3:03, we heard the whistling. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. Da-da-da-da-da-dum. It came and went, just like our neighbors said. The whistling returns every night, and we never look. And in return, we enjoy our million little blessings every day. Nola breathes on her own now. She has grown into a strong, clever girl. My dad even joined the welcoming committee. We don't get new neighbors often. Why would anyone want to leave? But when a new family moves in, my dad and the committee bring them the same macaroni casserole, the gift basket, and the manila folder. And I always know, just by the look on my dad's face when he comes back, whether the family took the committee seriously or if we'd be getting new neighbors again very soon. Not long ago, a family moved in right next door. The previous owner, Ms. Maddie, passed away at age 105. She had lived a long and good life. Our new neighbors seemed to fit in just fine. They believed the welcoming committee, took my dad's advice about locking the shutters, since they had a young child of their own. Whatever newspaper clippings were in that manila envelope, whatever evidence, my dad never let us see it. But I imagine it must have been very convincing, because our new neighbors had no issues for the first month, until one night, when they had to leave town. They sent their son Holden to stay with us. He was 12 years old, a year below me in school. I didn't know him well, but as soon as his parents dropped him off after dinner, I knew that night would be trouble. Do you know who's out there whistling every night? Holden asked the moment the adults left the room. The three of us were sitting in the den, some Disney movie playing in the background. My sister and I exchanged a glance. We don't talk about that, I said. I think it's that weirdo who lives in the big yellow house on the corner, Holden said. Mr. Tolles? My sister asked. No way, he's really nice. Holden shrugged. Then he must be a psycho killer. Nola tensed. We don't talk about it, I repeated. Let's go to my room and play Nintendo. We spent the next few hours playing games, eating popcorn, and watching movies. It was a normal sleepover, but I could see that Holden was getting restless. After my parents had wished us goodnight, locked the blinds, and gone to bed, Holden stood up from his beanbag and walked over to where Nola and I were sitting on my bed. Have you ever tried looking? He asked. It's almost time. Like most sleepovers, we had ignored any idea of bedtime. I was shocked to see that he was right. It was almost 3 a.m. I sighed. We don't see. I can't even try to. Look, because my dad locks the blinds every night and hides the key. Holden continued, ignoring me. So does our dad, Nola said. No, Holden replied. No, he doesn't. You saw him do it, I said, a little sharper than I meant to. Holden grinned. Your dad locks the blinds, yeah, but he doesn't hide the key. He keeps it right on his regular keychain. So? I asked, already feeling a sinking sensation in my stomach. Because I knew what he was going to say next. Because I had noticed that after all these years, my dad didn't bother hiding the key anymore. Because he knew we took it seriously. So, after your dad locked up, but before your parents went to bed, I went to the bathroom. And on my way, I may have peeked into their room. And I may have seen your dad's keychain on his nightstand. And I maybe went and borrowed the key to the blinds. Nola and I stared at him. His grin only grew wider. You're lying, I said. Holden shrugged. You can check if you want. Just open your parents' door and look. You'll see his keychain right there on the nightstand. Stay here, I told both of them. Don't move a muscle. I hurried to my parents' room but hesitated at the door. If Holden wasn't lying, my dad would be furious. Beyond furious. Just the thought of it terrified me. But what terrified me even more was the possibility of an open window, with the whistler right outside. I opened the door barely an inch and peeked inside, but it was too dark to see anything. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the room. 2 steps into the darkness, I froze. The whistling started, and I could hear it clearly, from inside my parents' room. I had never realized it before, but they must have heard that sound every night since we moved in. They never told us. I don't think I could have slept through it. I stood there, listening to the whistling grow closer, unsure if I should turn on a light or call for my dad. Soft sounds from the living room snapped me back to reality. Nola! I yelled. running out of my parents' room. Holden and Nola were standing near the front door, right next to a window. Holden wasn't lying. I saw him fidgeting with the lock on one of the blinds. I heard a click. He had the key. Holden let out a quick laugh. Nola stood next to him, curled up, scared, but maybe curious. The whistling was right outside our house now. I think I made a sound, called out, but I can't remember. Time felt frozen, like the hands of a clock nailed to its face. But somehow, I moved. I'm not fast. I've never been athletic. But somehow, I crossed the space between me and Nola in a flash. My eyes were locked on her, but I heard Holden pull the blind all the way down to release it. I heard the snap as it began to lift, and I heard the whistling just on the other side of the window, but I already had my arms around Nola and spun her away from the window. At the same time, I squeezed my eyes shut. The blind whipped open. The whistling stopped. I felt Nola trembling in my arms. "Don't look, okay?" I told her. "Don't turn around." We were positioned so that she was facing the hallway while I was facing the window. My eyes were still shut. I felt her nod against my shoulder. I reached out with the arm not holding Nola and tried to touch Holden. My fingers brushed his arm. He was shaking even worse than Nola. "Holden?" I asked. Silence. I reached past him, feeling for the window. My eyes still shut tight. The glass was ice cold against my fingers, much colder than it should have been for this time of year. I slid my hand upward, searching for the blind cord. As my hand moved higher, the glass grew warmer, and a soft hum vibrated against my fingertips. I tried not to think about what might be on the other side of the window. Finally, I found the cord and yanked the blinds shut. I opened my eyes. In the dim light from the kitchen, I could see Holden, pale and small, staring at the now closed window. "Holden?" I asked again. He turned toward me and screamed. Everything became a blur of motion. Lights flashed on in the hallway and the living room. My parents' footsteps pounded across the hardwood floor, but I didn't turn to look at them. My eyes were locked on Holden. He was pale. He had bitten his lip so hard that a thin trickle of blood ran down his chin, and he had wet himself. "What happened?" my dad asked from behind me. I managed to turn away from Holden and look at my dad. He looked. I had never seen my dad scared before, but that night, I saw it. In that moment, a deep, old terror carved into his face, a parent's fear. "Just Holden?" he mouthed to me. I nodded. My dad exhaled. He looked so relieved I almost expected him to smile. But then he looked at Holden, and his expression changed. I wondered if he felt guilty for being relieved that only Holden had looked. There was a knock at the door. We all froze. Holden whimpered softly. "Don't open it," my mom said. She stood at the hallway entrance. I had always thought she was a skeptic, that she just humored my dad about the locked blinds and the whistler. But that night, we were all believers. I noticed that both my parents were holding baseball bats. They must have grabbed them from their room. The knock came again, this time a little louder. "Please don't open the door," Holden whispered. My dad walked over to him and pulled him into a hug. "We won't," he promised, still gripping the bat. "Nothing is coming in here tonight." Thud, thud, thud. This time, the knocking was so loud that the entire door shook. Holden screamed again. Nola clutched onto my neck. My mom knelt beside us, wrapping both of us in her arms. Thud, thud, thud. "Call the police," my mom whispered to my dad. The knocking stopped instantly. My dad looked over his shoulder at us. "Do you think—" He was cut off by frantic knocking, which faded into soft, polite tapping. "Police." The voice came from the other side of the door. It sounded exactly like my mom, like a parrot, repeating her words. "Police. Call the police." Tap, tap, tap. "Police." My mom pulled us even closer. "Police, police, police, police. Please stop," I heard her whisper. "I don't think calling them will help," my dad said. "How will we know when it's really them at the door?" The knocking came back, harder than before. The door shook. Then it stopped. After a long silence, the knocking returned. But this time, it came from the back door. We all turned together toward the back door, but the knocking immediately resumed at the front door. Front to back to front. Loud, then soft, then loud again. Suddenly, the sound was coming from both doors at once. Heavy, hammer-like blows. Then something started tapping against every window in the house. Then on the walls. It felt like we were inside a drum, and a dozen people were trying to play it at the same time. Or like we were a turtle, and something was trying to rip us out of our shell. "Stop!" Holden yelled. The knocking stopped instantly. "I won't tell," Holden said, staring at the door. "I promise I won't tell anyone what I saw. Just, please, go away." We waited for almost a minute. Then we heard it. Tap, tap, tap. A soft tapping, coming from the window Holden had looked through earlier. Holden started crying, sobbing like a prisoner watching a gallows being built outside his cell. My dad held him close, brushed his hair, but never lied to him. He never told him it would be okay. The tapping on the window continued for the rest of the night. We huddled together in the living room for I don't know how long. At some point, my mom tried to take us into my room while my dad stayed behind to watch the door. But the second we stepped into my bedroom, the knocking returned, so loud it was impossible to ignore. I was afraid the door wouldn't hold. We rushed back to the living room, and the knocking stopped. Only the tap 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 on the window remained. None of us slept that night. The sound stopped around 7 a.m. That's when the sun rises here. We waited 2 more hours before my dad opened one of the blinds. He made us go to his room first. I heard the sound of the door opening, then he came back inside. "It's over," he told us. Holden's parents came back around noon. My mom and dad walked him home and stayed inside with them for a long time. Nola and I watched from the window. She stuck to me all day, by my side, sometimes holding my hand. When my parents returned, they looked grim, but didn't tell us what they talked about with Holden's family. It was a Sunday, so we spent the day together, ordered pizza, and watched movies. That night, everyone slept in my room. Nola and my mom in bed with me. My dad in a chair he pulled over. There was no knocking that night, nor any night since. We didn't see much of Holden or his parents for the rest of the week, but by Thursday, a moving truck was in their driveway. Nola and I watched them pack all afternoon after school. What sticks with me the most is how tired they looked. All 3 of them, Holden and his parents. They had the same pale faces, tight lips, and empty eyes. Even from across the street, I could tell something was very wrong. Before sunset, Holden and his family were gone. I remember what the original welcoming committee told my parents when we moved in. Not everyone who looks at the Whistler dies, but even those who live, the light goes out in them, and the rest of their lives are filled with misfortune. A million little tragedies. I think Holden's parents must have looked too, maybe to comfort him if they didn't believe, or to share the burden if they did. Sometimes, I watch Nola, happy, young, alive, and I wonder if I had been slower, if she had looked out the window. That night, would I have looked too, to comfort her, to share that burden? I'm glad I'll never have to find out. We still live in that house, in that neighborhood. We still hear our Whistler walking past every night. The blessings, the luck, the good things are too good to leave, but we're careful. We don't invite friends to stay overnight anymore. And my dad hides the key to the blinds very, very well. Not that I've ever tried looking for it. Some things you just don't need to see.